so worked in sports events security, and currently working on a large international sporting event with some venues that are well established for delivery and some venues that aren't necessarily their day-to-day business, delivering in international kind of events, more leisure centres and what have you, in places that are turning their space into that. So I think that hopefully we'll be able to give a bit of an insight from a service provider and an organiser point of view about the practicalities and about how this shouldn't be too scary, about what we can do as events people to get ready.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So firstly, we're just going to look at session objectives. What is it we're going to learn from today's session? So we're going to understand the origins and intent behind Martyn's Law, otherwise known as Protect Duty. We're going to identify the key differences between standard and enhanced tier requirements. We're going to gain clarity on legal duties, the enforcement and compliance timelines. We're going to explore the 5 key action areas for implementation and preparedness. We want to be able to understand the human and ethical importance to safeguarding in public spaces. And we want to access resources and tools that are available to support readiness for staff training. And looking at some of the agenda of what it is we're going to be covering today, we're going to set the scene. We're going to understand the story behind Martyn's Law. Why now? Why do we need to make this change? Who does it affect? And how does it affect you as an organisation? We're going to understand the key differences behind the 2 tiers that are available. We're going to put into practice the 5 key action areas, understand the collaboration between venues and events organisers and staff training. We're going to understand our legal duties and enforcements and understand what happens if you don't comply. We're going to learn how we can get ready and what simple steps we can take for effective preparation. We're going to learn what support and resources and free tools and templates and training are available. And we're also going to understand what the timeline is and when this law will take place and what we can be doing now. So let's begin about talking a little bit by where Martyn Law comes from and why does it matter. So Martyn Hett was one of the 22 people killed in the tragic Manchester bombing in May 2017. He was vibrant, much loved young man known for his big personality, his creativity and his kindness. And his death, along with the others that night, was a heartbreaking loss, and it exposed some serious gaps into how we protect public spaces. After the attack, Martyn's mother, Figan Murray, she began a passionate campaign for change. She believed that no one attending a concert, event or public venue could be so vulnerable, and that stronger precautions should save lives in the future. Her work has led to what we now know as Martyn's Law, but it also has been referred to in the past as Protect Duty. So if you hear either of those sayings, they mean the same thing. The core purpose of this law is to make sure that every organisation is responsible for public venues are doing everything they reasonably can to help keep people safe. This means they need to understand potential threats, plan for emergencies and make sure staff are trained to respond. This law represents a cultural shift from reacting to incidents after they happen to being prepared for them in advance with the ultimate goal to prevent loss of life. So let's turn to now why Martyn's Law is so critically needed. So those events of the 22nd of May 2017, when that suicide bomber attacked Manchester Arena, it changed the way we think about public safety in public spaces. In total, 22 people were tragically killed that night and many others were injured. And what this attack has revealed is that many public venues, including those with large crowds, were not adequately prepared to deal with a terrorist threat. The subsequent Manchester Arena inquiry uncovered significant flaws in venue security. And although a tragic event, it was a very interesting read to clearly see the gaps within their procedures and communication plans. And I know, Gavin, you experienced this closer than most, haven't you, with what you've been through up there?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think it kind of all hits home. I was a protection officer on the Prime Minister's team at the time, so we went up to Manchester in the days following, and I think that then on events like this and in-person events with Figan and stuff like that, it really kind of the responsibility is us as event organisers, owners or operators to get these things right. They're not asking, she's not asking for a lot. She's just asking for us to kind of get our heads together in the first instance and work out what's reasonable and realistic to deliver. And I think that we can do.
Absolutely. And one of the major findings from looking at an inquiry was at the time of the attack, there was no legal duty for the venues to assess or address that terrorism risk. And actually, many venues lack formal plans or procedures in this, which can lead to inconsistent levels of safety. and it creates an environment where safety has been left to chance rather than actively being managed. So this is where Martyn's Law comes in. It aims to close those gaps and introduce legal obligation for venues to actively plan and prepare to terrorist threats. The law is going to require risk assessments, better staff training, more robust emergency response plans, and by doing so, it seeks to protect the public and reduces the chance of similar tragedies happening in the future. So now we know the background of Martyn's Law, we're now going to look at who it actually applies to. So the law targets venues based on their capacity, not their individual meeting room sizes. So if your venue holds 200 people or more, you're going to be subject to the standard duty requirements. This might include places like small conference centres, theatres, shopping centres. For example, a collective of 4 meeting spaces with a capacity of 50 would make 200. So there's lots of different ways that can make up. For larger venues that can hold up to 800 people or more, you guys are going to be subject to enhanced duty, which has additional requirements. These venues include large concert halls, sports stadium, exhibition centres, arenas, anyone who can hold over 800 or more people. It's important also to remember that Martyn's Law is not just limited to entertainment venues. It applies to a wide range of public spaces, which I've listed here. There are some exceptions within the legislation for exceptional circumstances, but generally spaces welcoming over 200 people or more, including those with ticketed access or membership entry, will have to follow this legislation. Also, an important note, this is a very commonly question asked, it only applies to public areas in a building, and office spaces or private spaces are excluded from the capacity. So the key takeaway here is that if your venue hosts large crowds, then the law will likely apply to you, whether it's permanent or temporary event space, like a pop-up festival or a temporary stadium. It will apply if you're gathering more than 200 people together. So now we're going to look at how Martyn's Law applies specifically to venues with multiple premises. So Martyn's Law focuses on public premises, and also universities are no exception. The key point is the law applies per qualifying building, not across the entire institution as a whole. So each building that has access to the public and access to 200 people or more may fall under the law. And with those between 200 and 799 people classed as standard tier, and those with 800 or more falling under the enhanced tier. On the other hand, buildings not open to the public, such as admin offices, buildings with key card entrance, or those with half meeting space and half private space, they may not be covered by the legislation at all. Martyn's Law doesn't just apply to permanent venues, it also applies to temporary venues temporary events held on site if they meet certain criteria as well. So it may not be active on a day-to-day basis, but if you have temporary events on site, it will then become active. If you're hosting an event that's open to the public, like a concert, open day, graduation, sports event, large-scale conference, and it's expected to attract over 200 people, then it's likely that Martyn's Law will apply to that space. The venue's duties that they have to do depend on your risk level and tiers, which we're going to look at shortly. But it will be important to identify who is responsible for each building, and it will be important to identify who will be responsible for updating all of those paperwork along with them. So remember that compliance is an ongoing duty, and each building must regularly review and update its security measure. I'm just going to pause here to say, if anyone has any questions, pop them in the chat, pop them in the Q&A. We're going to do a big Q&A session at the end, where Gavin and I will do a bit of a panel session, and we're going to put it out to the floor as well. So any questions as we go, just make a note, stick them in the chat and Q&A, and we'll get to them shortly for you. So now we're going to take a closer look at the two duty levels introduced under Martyn's Law, standard and enhanced tier. You're going to get sick of me saying that, but just drill it in your head. These tiers determine the level of preparedness and security measures that venues and organisations must have in place based on their size and the nature of activity that is carried out at the venue. So starting with the standard tier, it applies to those smaller venues, again, typically with a capacity of over 200 people. The requirements here are focused on proportionate risk management. For example, you must conduct a basic terrorism risk assessment, provide staff training to identify and respond to threats, and your registration with the regulator. However, it does not mandate formal security plans. The idea is to ensure that there's a basic level of awareness and preparedness without placing disproportionate burdens on smaller operators. And Gavin and I were just having a chat about this beforehand. It's not really, we don't think it's going to impact you massively on sort of your day-to-day. It's just being aware and making sure your paperwork's up to date, and being that everyone is aware of it within your venue and trained sufficiently to respond to any threats. But in contrast, the enhanced tier, this is going to apply to those of 800 or more. These venues must take far more comprehensive measures. These include detailed risk assessments, formalised security plans, and enhanced staff training. They're also required to run regular drills and exercises, have robust instant response plans, implement communication systems that function both internally and externally during a crisis. And the frequency and depth of regulatory oversight are greater in this category, and there are record-keeping requirements around training, drills, risk assessments as well. You'll also see that enhanced tier venues must assess whether specific physical security measures, such as CCTV, bag checks, are required. These are going to be proportionate to the level of the risk they face. It's not just about compliance, but it's about creating a culture of vigilance and preparedness. Also, crucially, both tiers must appoint a designated senior officer, also referred to as a DSI. These will be the people in your venue who will oversee the compliance and register the premises with the Security Industry Authority. So in summary, whilst both tiers aim to improve public safety, and enhanced tiers, they require a much deeper structured approach to risk planning and accountability. This tiered system ensures the measures are scalable, different types of venues, and they're proportionate and realistic depending on the nature and size of your premises. And, you know, ultimately, Martyn's Law is about saving lives, making our events safer. If you don't quite qualify for either of those tiers, you can still make additional duty actions to enhance safety and protect everyone at your own events. So although it might not legally apply to you if you fall under these categories, it's still best practice to do so. And this is your duty of care as an event organiser and a venue to make sure that you're delivering safe events. Gavin, do you have anything to add to this slide at this point?
No, I don't, not specifically. I just think that it's just reiteration of the fact that actually there's a lot of this you're going to be doing anyway, and it may be mapping across or kind of skills mapping the stuff that you've got, and your compliance may already be there. Certainly for the kind of standard duty tier, it shouldn't be too frightening. It should be things from a standard point of view that you're doing anyway, or you're doing 3/4 of. So it's just then it's going to be about identifying the gap between what you're doing at the moment and what you might need to do in the future to get compliant. And the enhanced kind of tier, any venue that's got 800 people will likely have a lot of these systems in place, or if you do need to put them into place, a lot of it you're going to need to do once. And once you've got that, it's about review. And it's about not just saying, right, okay, we blow off the cobwebs from this because we did the same event last year. It's actually just going through it and saying, right, is that still relevant? And so it isn't necessarily a scary, massive, cost change that's going to stop you delivering these events. It's just about doing a little bit of work in preparedness.
Exactly. The legislation is not designed to scare people. It's not a scare tactic. It's just it's about awareness, isn't it? And actually understanding the paperwork that you're preparing, and making sure that not only one person understands it, but that everybody in the venue works together to understand it, so that we can respond accordingly in a situation. So now we're going to look at putting into practice the 5 key areas that can be addressed to ensure Martyn's Law successfully implemented. These are going to focus on practical steps that venues can take to be prepared and respond to any potential threats. So first, we're going to start with risk assessments. All of you already have a risk assessment. If you don't, definitely get one. You may even cover terrorism within them. However, you will need to go back and review and update these. Like Gavin said, it's just you need to make sure you're thoroughly evaluating all those risks and threat levels associated with your events and what measures you're going to put in place to reduce them. It's a critical process where venues identify all the threats and vulnerabilities. There are 4 types of procedures that must be in place as appropriate, as so far as reasonably practical. These are evacuation plans, what are you going to be doing to get people safely out of your premises? Evacuation, this is the process of people bringing people safely into or to safer parts of your premises. Lockdown, which is the process of securing the premises to prevent individuals from entering or exiting, and any ways you're going to prevent entry to the premises, such as locking doors, closing shutters, using barriers. And then communication of how you're going to alert people on the premises of danger, and provide instructions to remain in place or move further away from the danger. So these are the 4 sort of key areas that you need to be thinking about in those specific sections of your risk assessments. And as we've mentioned, the law doesn't require physical changes, but you must take into consideration what's appropriate and reasonably practical for the type of events you're delivering. So it is really important to think about that with every event you are delivering. It's important that you regularly update these assessments to take account for any new risks or new changes in your environment. And you also to think about different event profiles that might impact those threat levels. So a high profile event, something with political influence, religious influence, anything that might be of a higher target. Once your risks are identified, the next step is to do some security planning. So this involves putting into place measures to reduce and identify the risks. So this might include screening procedures, access control, crowd management, to ensure that your venue is as safe as possible for everybody. So this could be things such as bag scanners, ticketed entry, prohibited item policies, enhanced CCTV monitoring. You might have restricted areas, have certain exit and entry policies. You might have some event check-in systems with ID badges, additional event security. You might have event barriers to manage control and access. So lots of different things you can put in place. Some of them are relatively valuable, some of you already do. These are just things you can be thinking about. Another crucial element is staff training. So this is something that I don't think everybody does at the moment. All staff should be trained to recognise suspicious behaviour and know exactly what to do in an emergency. It includes being familiar with your evacuation routes and all of your emergency procedures. We're going to cover more on staff training later on as well. Next, we're going to look at incident response plans. These are also vital. So these plans outline what to do in case an emergency occurs, including how to communicate with staff and the public as well, and what evacuation procedures you're going to follow, and how to ensure medical assistance is available should you need it. So within this, you're also going to consider how you're going to communicate in an incident to all stakeholders. So is this code words? Have you got certain communication channels? And also how you're going to inform your attendees. So is it an event app notification? Are you going to work with your event host to do an announcement? And venues with enhanced duty will also need to work with the local emergency services where relevant to notify them of their event plans. And the event profile and procedures. So should they need to be able to support you or respond to any incidents during your event. And then finally, is testing and exercising the plans. This is going to be essential. So you need to do regular drills and exercises to practice real life scenarios, whether it's evacuation procedures, threat response, communication with emergency services. All these exercises help to identify areas that need improvement, and they can also give staff confidence in the ability to act when necessary as well. So all of these 5 areas, they're going to work together to ensure that venues are prepared to assess potential threats and also make sure that public safety is your priority. So now we're just going to talk a little bit about how venues and events managers must work together to ensure the compliance with Martyn's Law and how to safeguard the public. So both parties have a shared responsibility in ensuring that security measures are in place and at risk are managed effectively. I know this because I've actively kind of been on both sides of it, and communication between these 2 parties is absolutely key. So first, we're going to look into this in a bit more detail. So both the venue and event organisers must recognise that public safety is joint responsibility. It's not just the venue's role to ensure the event is safe, but it's also the event organisers. So these will be your clients if you're working in a venue. They must be proactive in their planning and prepare for any potential risks. So It's a collaborative approach that's going to ensure that both sides are aligned and prepared to respond effectively to any threats. So a lot of your clients may have event managers, they may come and run events for them on site, they may have internal event managers within their organisation. So it's about working with those types of people to be able to work together to effectively manage any threats or risks during your event. So leading on from that is your joint risk assessment. So venues, as we said, you already have one, but you must work together to conduct your risk assessment. So these assessments should account for factors such as your crowd sizes, the type of event it is it a concert, a conference, the type of things that are going on during your event, or any specific threats that will be relevant to the venue or the event itself. So by pooling all this knowledge and resources together, we can help identify potential risks that may otherwise be overlooked. Because ultimately, as a venue, you don't know what's going on in people's agendas. You rely on people to tell you that, and it's about information sharing. It's the bit that we're missing at the minute, that communication piece. Just profiling events, understanding what's going on within your venue, and who it's attracting as well. Who are the type of audience that are coming? So then we're going to look at coordinated security planning. This is next step. So once we've identified what those risks are, both the venue and event organisers need to develop coordinated security plans. Includes implementing access control measures such as screening, checking credentials upon entry, ensuring there are clear procedures for emergency evacuation, and all communication between the venue and the event organisers and the events team are on clear communication channels, and everyone knows what's going on. So it's going to ensure that both parties are working towards those same objectives with the aligned plans and process. Because ultimately, if there's something going on during your event, it's your event organizer that needs to help orchestrate all those people to move to one direction with the support of the venue as well. It's a shared responsibility. So everybody needs to be informed of those. And event registration ultimately is down to your event manager. So they also need to be aware of anything that you require as a venue as well. So staff training and briefings, these are going to be really essential for effective collaboration. So both your venue staff and your event organizer teams must be trained together. Training should focus on recognizing suspicious behavior, understanding emergency response protocols, and ensuring that everyone knows how to manage evacuations and do effective crowd control. And by training together, both groups will be more coordinated, efficient in a crisis, basically. And then lastly, regular communication is key. So ongoing communication between the venue and event organisers, it just ensures that both sides are kept up to date of any changes, be it to security protocols or the event schedule itself. Just keeping those briefings regular, updates regular, it's going to help both parties stay aligned and be prepared for any potential risks or threats. So to summarise, all of this effective collaboration between the venue and event organisers is crucial for Martyn's Law. They all play key roles in creating a secure and prepared environment for all your attendees. Gavin, do you have anything else to reflect to add to this from your kind of learnings that you've had?
No, I think you can kind of go back to some of the things that you might be doing already with relation to the training and things like that, pushing it wider. Using when you're doing your fire evacuation training, all you've got to do is have an element within that process to say, okay, if we were going to go into run hightail, which is advice and guidance, or into lockdown or evacuation, what would you do at this point now? So we can get those things kind of covered off. I suppose really of the bits that people have heard so far, hopefully what I'll be able to give a little bit of background or support with, having been all three sides, organizer, worked in a venue and been a service provider, is answer some of the questions. So if you're thinking about how's it going to impact me as a venue that might be sitting somewhere in between the two tiers. If you're above, you may be heading all over this. If you're below, what are the likely things we can do? So just really, I suppose at this point, just to think about some of the questions you might be, if you've got a concern now, how would we facilitate that? It's probably something straightforward that we can do and give you some advice and guidance on, or point you in the direction of where you can get that advice and guidance around this.
Perfect, thank you. And when I was actively doing this with some of the venues that I was working with, they were like, why do you need our security plans? That's confidential, that's private. And this sharing of knowledge and pulling this experience together is what's going to make our events safer. And people have fear that it's going to get into the wrong hands, but ultimately it's about preventing those risks. and trying to be in control if should something happen, to prevent those loss of lives. Ultimately things will happen. It's just how we're going to be prepared to respond to those. So don't be scared to talk about it with your clients and your event managers. It's okay to do that. Ultimately, we need to be doing that to make sure everything's safe. So now we're going to talk a little about briefing agency staff and emergency response. So Gavin and I were having a chat the other day about this, in that we, as venues, we bring in a lot of support staff from agencies, temporary staff, people on shorter-term contracts, and they also need to be trained. So it's essential that all staff, whether they're permanent, agency, temporary, contracted, that they all receive briefing on our emergency procedures. It isn't just a suggestion, it is a requirement. Everybody on site at your venue needs to know what to do and when, if an incident occurs. So why do we do this? Well, it ensures that everyone knows what to do in an emergency, and it helps us meet those legal obligations against the legislation. And it also reduces confusion and helps keep everybody safe. So, ultimately your attendees at an event, they're going to rely on the staff to tell them what to do in an event of an emergency. So your staff need to know, because they're the ones that are there, in theory, are there more than the attendees. So what should this briefing cover? So staff should be familiar with evacuation routes, assembly points, understand communication procedures, know of any or their own individual roles during an emergency, just be pointing people in the right direction, and be updated of any new threats or changes to your procedures that you have. So think of it as having a roadmap, so everyone knows exactly where they're going and what they need to do. So to get the most out of these briefings, you need to conduct them regularly, especially whenever procedures change, and make sure that you document that each staff has attended this training as well. The documentation is not just paperwork, it is proof that we are doing it and we are committed to safety. So a well-informed team is a safe team ultimately. So proper briefings can save lives and can ensure that we are compliant with the law. So make sure that no one is left unprepared. Gavin, do you have anything else to add to this from what we were sort of thinking about the other day?
Yeah. I suppose you've got to look at your venue, look at how you operate, and think, okay, where are we bringing, when talking specifically about agency staff, where are we going to bring people in from? So if things go awry, or things aren't going to plan, and we've got an incident, or we suspect that there might be an incident, who might be affected? And a lot of the time within venues, we look straight away at the stewarding or security companies that we've brought in. Again, the stewarding or security companies, it's pretty standard, and it's reasonable and proportionate for you to expect that you get regular staff when you deliver these events. If you're not getting regular staff, look at your service providers and what they can do, because there's plenty of companies out there who've got the capability to do that. But also perhaps just look a little bit wider, and again, it goes right back to our risk assessment and what's proportionate. Often within events and conference and exhibition, our catering staff might be a large proportion of the workforce that we've got on duty that day, that they don't know the emergency procedures. Do they know what's going to happen? Within our risk assessment, do we want them to be part of any evacuation or support, or do we want them to go at that point? And what there may be areas within the business where we've got within larger venues, if there's electrical, staging, rigging, or any of those people, do they have that basic awareness? Now, all of that training is pretty straightforward. Go back to if you've got security companies there, the staff should be act and scan trained. There should be an awareness around control rooms, but just think a little bit outside the box, and don't think of this as a tick box exercise, but just look very, very quickly around, okay, who else is part of this event or operating within the venue that knows our codes, that knows that if we go into, that we want to search an area, or we want to go into the stages prior to evacuation or lockdown, who's going to be affected, and do they know that? It's part of your preparedness and your readiness that will come as that kind of event planning bit. But I think that it's worthwhile at this point just thinking, when we talk about agency staff or temporary labour or casual staff, who does that include and who could it affect? So just think about that a little bit wider. A little bit of training on one of the briefings at the start of a series, or once a month, that extra 15 minutes to just run through might get the person who, and it goes on to, if they're recognising what they might think could be hostile reconnaissance, or it might just be someone paying a bit too much attention, that they've got the confidence that your catering staff are another pair of eyes and ears, your cleaners are another pair of eyes and ears, and they've got the confidence to report something.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. That's really helpful to add to that information. So let's look at the legal obligations that come with Martyn's Law, as well as how enforcement will work to ensure compliance. So first, we're going to look at enforcement is carried out by local authorities or relevant regulators. So these bodies are going to be responsible for ensuring that public venues comply with the law. This will include risk assessments, implementing security measures, providing you staff training. They're also going to check that venues have proper incident response plans in place. And these plans are going to be regularly tested. If the venue fails to meet these requirements, then they may face civil penalties, and this means that fines or other sanctions could be imposed on venues that are not in compliance. So the severity of these penalties depends on the extent of the non-compliance. But the key point is that the law carries real consequences or failure to act. Finally, venues may also be subject to inspections or audits by the local authorities or other regulatory bodies, and these inspections are there to help venues that are following through on their security and also their safety measures that they've said they're going to be doing, and it's going to help identify areas that might need improvement. Regular audits are also going to be part of the ongoing process to ensure that the compliance and safety. So to summarise this slide, Martyn's Law establishes clear legal obligations enforcement through inspections and audits and penalties for non-compliance, and all are designed to ensure that venues are fully prepared and committed to public safety. So now we're going to look at how to get ready. So how you can prepare your venue for Martyn's Law and the key steps you need to take to ensure compliance and safety. So the first things you're going to need to do is appoint a security lead or manager. So this individual will be responsible for overseeing your security measures, ensuring compliance with Martyn's Law, and coordinating preparedness and activities. The security lead should have experience in risk management, ideally, and emergency response. So this ideally should also be a senior member of staff rather than a lower level employee. Next, you want to conduct your thorough risk assessment of the venue. As we said, you've probably already had this already. You need to consider factors such as size of your venue, location, types of events and crowd sizes. And once identified, you regularly update the assessment to account for any changes or risks. Once you've done the risks, you need to then implement or update your response plan. So these plans should outline how to respond to potential emergencies, including evacuation procedures, communication protocols, coordination with emergency services, and be sure to keep them up to date and keep them relevant. Next, we'll look at training your staff. It's a critical step to ensure your venue is prepared. So staff should be trained to recognise suspicious behaviour and understand emergency procedures. So we need to provide training for both in person, and there are also e-learning modules so you can reach all your staff members and accommodate different styles of learning as well. And then lastly, we need to engage with expert counter-terrorism resources. There are so many available online that you can go to for seek advice at the moment. So you have organisations such as the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, known as NACTSO. You've got ACT Awareness, which is the Action Counters Terrorism. These guys offer invaluable service and advice and resources to help venues stay up to date on the latest best practices for counter-terrorism. So please do take advantage of their guidance to help ensure that your venue is fully prepared. There's loads of things on their website at the moment, and they will also be posting updates as the legislation changes in time as well. So let's just take a little bit more of a look about what tools we have available to help you guys prepare for Martyn's Law and how you can strengthen your counter-terrorism efforts. So there's you can expect statutory guidance from the Home Office. It's currently being drafted, but it will convert the existing educational guidance into formal, legally enforceable rules. So the NACTSO, they provide a range of guidance materials already online for public venues. They've got risk assessment templates, security protocol measures, best practices specifically designed to help venues reduce vulnerabilities and improve security. So the NACTSA's advice is comprehensive, highly valuable for anyone responsible for managing security in public venues. So go and have a read of those. I've also put a link there to the Protect UK. They have so much information on there, and they are keeping that up to date as well. We also have the awareness e-learning course. It's a key resource to help train, recognise suspicious behaviour and how to understand security risks. So this is an online training. It's easily accessible. It covers security awareness for all different staff levels, from frontline employees to senior management. It's a practical, effective way to ensure everyone at your venue is prepared. I've done this training myself. I made all my team do it. It's a simple, interactive training session online. You can do it independently anytime. Really simple and easy to use and follow as well. Also, you can engage with your local police or counter-terrorism advisors. These experts can offer personalised advice which will be tailored to your venue's location and any specific threats in your local area that you can think of. So these guys can provide support with risk assessments, emergency planning. They can offer you workshops, briefings to help your venue be prepared for any security issues that may arise. So all of these are valuable and invaluable tools that can help expert guidance and provide expert guidance and training and support to ensure that your venue is well prepared and compliant with Martyn's Law. So there are things out there. Don't feel like you're on your own. There are many other people in the same boat, and these guys will be your sort of gurus of the area. So now we're going to look at the timeline for Martyn's Law and what that looks like for your organisation. So the Terrorism Protection of Premises Act, which is its legal name, of 2025, it's commonly known as Martyn's Law. It received royal assent on Thursday, 3rd of April, thanks to Vegan's hard work this year, but it means it's now law and the countdown to compliance has officially begun. So the Security Industry Authority, known as SIA, they're currently establishing its regulatory framework and guidance for now, but it's good to start planning and thinking who your DSI will be and how you're going to report them into the SIA. From this point, there's a 24-month implementation period that's going to give people 2 years, well, we're into that 2 years now, but to understand requirements, assess their current readiness, and put into place necessary processes and training documentation. So we are within that now, because it started from April, and we are starting to see a little bit more information coming out about it. So we'll need to keep an eye on that. We'll probably run another seminar as we hear more from the authorities as well for you. We strongly encourage people to action early, basically get things going, start your preparations now. Ultimately it will lead to better compliance and significantly will reduce your risk, and ultimately we're saving lives, so why not do it sooner, right? You'll have time to build your team's awareness. You can adjust your existing plans and embed security into your organization's culture, so we're getting people used to it. So when it you want it to be that it just hits a date and it's like, bam, it's active, you have to do it. Let's do the soft approach and get people familiar with what we're doing earlier, and give them time to adapt as well. So what can we do and be right now? So let's start with your risk assessment. Start with those. It's a good foundation of the legislation. So review your existing training plans, identify what your gaps are, and begin to establish or strengthen your emergency procedures from this point. The earlier you begin, the smoother this transition is going to be, not only for compliance and safety, but as I said before, for confidence for everybody involved with your events within your venue. So let's just do a quick wrap up of the key takeaways from today's session. So first and foremost, Martyn's Law introduces new legal obligations designed to enhance public safety and counter the threat of terrorism. These obligations apply to public venues and are structured into your tiers, your standard and your enhanced tiers, based on size and risk level of your premises. At the core of the legislation are 5 key requirements: to conduct risk assessments, provide staff training, develop security plans, and establish effective communication systems and preparing for instant response. Remember, it's not just about legal compliance. We have an ethical responsibility, and ensuring public safety is something we all have a duty to take seriously. We have a 24-month implementation period, which has already started. So now's the time to get prepared. Don't wait until that deadline's looming. Early preparation will give your team confidence, resources and systems needed to stay compliant and keep people safe. And finally, no, you're not alone. Resources, templates, professional support, all available to you to help you guide your organisation every step of the way. And if you have any questions or need assistance, we are all here. We are all in this together. We are an industry. We are one big team, and ultimately we are working towards the same goal to keep people safe ultimately. So use the resources available to you, ask questions, talk to each other, because it's the best way we're going to learn. We're going to learn it together. So thank you for your time today. I know we have had some questions come in, so I will have a look at what those are now. Okay, so we have a question from Andrea. Would this include a Remembrance Sunday event which is held outside? I believe it's a public gathering in a public space, so I would believe that would come under the temporary event category. Would you agree with that, Gavin?
Yeah, I think so. I think if it's a local church and your numbers are a below, then render cenotaph no. But certainly organised council-led events, I think I'd wholeheartedly expect them to be included. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think with it being an outdoor event, you'd have to think about sort of controlling your access. If you're thinking barriers, access control, added security, your sort of ingress and egress points into your venue, just to make sure where how people are going into your event, and maybe one-way system so that you can monitor who's going in versus who's going out, that kind of thing. So a lot of that you probably already would do anyway. But it's just being able to control the environment in a bit of a safer way. Yeah. Jane, you've asked if it would apply to venues that comprise of multiple separate spaces, where each space may individually accommodate a smaller number, but across the venue it may exceed 800 in total. So it's based on a venue capacity. So if you have a collective of smaller event spaces, that add up to 200 or more, then it will trigger it. If your spaces are private office spaces, so I think we've had this conversation before, Jane, that if you have event space downstairs and office space upstairs, the office space upstairs isn't classed as public space, it's private, because it's controlled by access and it's private space. So you'll only have to consider the public space below, where people can access the building and roam around. So you need to think about those spaces that your events will take place in, and where people will have public access to it. We have a question from Mark. He said, do the standards apply equally throughout the UK, including Northern Ireland? I know it's a UK-wide legislation. Gavin, do you think it goes all the way up to Northern Ireland?
I think that the devolved governments will adopt this, whether devolution and the legislation gets put on beyond the Westminster government. I'd have to check, to be fair. It's not something that I've looked at previously, but I can certainly find out. I would assume, and that we all think that assuming does, that as a standard, it will be adopted across everywhere, whether it's legislation and the timing and phasing of that legislation. We'll check on that and come back to you. I think so.
Yeah, it would feel like it should, but as you said, we don't want to assume. The thing is, with this legislation, it is unknown to a lot of people right now, and as they release things, we gain as much knowledge as you do. So we'll just have to see kind of what further guidance comes out with the paperwork that they're going to be releasing. Another question from Natalie. Will you be sharing the slides post-meeting? Yeah, we'll share a recording which has the slides included for you, so you can go back and refer to these afterwards. I can share the slide deck out as a PDF as well if required. I know there's a lot of information on those slides that you can take away and share with your team, so absolutely. And a question mark: is a DSI responsible when something goes wrong? Are they ultimately responsible for the event security? So the DSI is responsible for making sure that the paperwork is up to date and that all the safety requirements have been met, and they're responsible for making sure that everyone's trained and, as I said, that everything sort of comes together as per the security plans that you're putting in place. So the responsibility wouldn't fall solely on those, but as long as they have made sure everything is done in line with what they've promised, then they should be fine.
Yeah, I think on that, just to kind of support, I suppose, if you look at a safety officer at a football match, they're responsible for everything's planned and prepared and what have you. You can't be responsible for the actions of an individual that does something off script or away from that risk assessment or process or briefing, for that matter, that's been put in place. Hence why it's important to document that your colleagues and the people that are working alongside you have been briefed to do that.
Yeah, and the DSI is not someone to blame at all. It's just that it's identifying someone who's going to be responsible, because one of the findings from what happened in the Manchester arena bombings is that everybody assumed someone else was doing something, and there was a massive gap and a flaw in those plans, because the reality was there was a margin where nobody was doing something, and that's what led to that window of opportunity that caused that incident. So it's just giving someone responsibility to make sure that someone has taken on that responsibility to do it, to make sure it does get done ultimately. And it's also someone that other people within an organisation can go to seek advice or ask questions. It's just that point of contact, basically. So don't feel like if something goes wrong, they're just going to get everything thrown at them, because that's not the way. We can't plan for when something happens. We can just be prepared for if it does. That's the best advice I can give, really, for that. Yeah. Do we have any other questions at this point from any of the audience? From anything we discussed? I'm really hoping you found it all very helpful, informative. We didn't scare you. But ultimately, Gavin and I, we share the same passion, and it's to make our events safe. And the only way we're going to learn and everybody's going to be aware of it is if we all talk about it. So I hope you can take away some things from this event and share it with your other industry colleagues as well. Oh, okay, let me go over to the Q&A. Thank you. I've just seen some messages pop up. Non-ticketed events that are held in public areas, parks and open spaces. So I believe they would still require they would still fall under the legislation. There is a bit of a grey area with parks and open recreational spaces that's not outlined in the schedule. So my advice would be to refer to the legislation and just check if you fall under that exemption piece, because I believe it's anywhere that requires controlled access would trigger that. Gavin, do you feel if a non-ticketed event in an open space would fall under the legislation? I know there's a grey area in that area.
So if you've got that number of people, it goes back to what you said at the start. It's best practice to have that there, and I think a non-ticketed event in an open space is often, whether that's through council or there's other bits that come on from some of the planning around this, around grey spaces and who owns and responsible. So I think whether it falls into legislation or not, because there are going to be some exemptions, it's probably best practice to look at those things in place. I know that locally in the village that I live in, they have a festival in the summer every year and what have you, and the numbers are, I'm not sure which side. I thought to myself, I'm not sure which side this fell. So I said, well, look, I'll give you a hand and we'll dot the I's and cross the T's anyway. It's not, I just saw someone down there say that it's useful but scary. Honestly, it really, really doesn't need to be. Speak to your colleagues. If you've got a group of venues, or you've got venues next door, or if you've got bigger venues or contacts within those venues, and I know that, as I said earlier, I recognise some of the names on the chat there. When I've worked in arenas, or where I'm currently working for at the moment, is a large sporting event with multi-thousands of attendees, if you like. I wouldn't mind in that role, or the role that I do now, someone contacting us and saying, can you run through this? I don't think anybody's going to mind. And the SIA, I think, as a regulatory body, will like to see that early kind of early planning and heads up. There's nothing within this that there isn't going to be somebody that hasn't done it 10 times. It's not, you don't need to be a wild academic to get your head around the risk assessments or the plannings. If I can do it, I'd be able to sort someone, we'd be able to sort someone through. So would Emily, no doubt, to be able to do that. So please don't be scared about or see this as a blocker. I don't think it'll be a commercial blocker. I don't think it'll be an administrative blocker. I think we just got to talk to each other and be able to support each other in getting that through. And I think the point you made earlier was what I was going to raise, really, and then you said it.
I think people will have a lot of questions, and this type of session will prompt a lot of thought afterwards. So if you find you have any questions, you think, I wish I'd asked that in the session, just pop myself or Gavin a message. I'm happy to help answer it, jump on a call with you, talk through some things with you. Like, it's no problem at all. We're doing our bit for the industry, because, like I said, we share this passion, same passion to make a change. So feel free to ask questions after this session if you have anything pop to your head. Us at Switch, we are trying to think of ways that we can help in the planning of your events, different ways we can help make sort of the planning process more efficient between yourselves as venues and your customers, and collating and storing the right information that we need to be doing. So we'll be sharing that out with our clients who are on here. Hello to all of you. It's soon enough, and giving you kind of best advice and practice of how you guys can be using the system for that. But if anyone has any questions of things they can be doing themselves, we're happy to lend some advice to you where we can.